the Guadalupe River here in Kerrville, Texas. It's a bleary day. I just woke up, but I got to keep my commitment, and so I'm here. I quickly opened up this this book that I like and turned to the first page. It's actually a book I wrote, but I'm not selling books. The content of my book I published has basically been really good material for me to share online. It gives me ideas, so I just open up a copy, open up anywhere and have a look at it, and try to find something to say in this mental gem of mine. And so here I am, and I opened up the book, and it is Ralph Waldo Emerson. Share the Love is the name of this chapter, and this is a book I wrote some years ago about being a missionary in Peru, and how it says, where do you think you're going? And how everybody has a unique God-given mission. That's kind of what the book's about. It's sort of a showcase for, my the breadcrumb trail of my unusual life. I never wanted to be normal, folks. There was never a time when I wanted to be this thing called normal. And I did my best and followed my instincts to run around the planet all over the place from the time I could get loose. And so while I was in Peru we were missionary. We lived there in Peru, in Cusco, Peru, for 4 years, but I took groups there a couple of other years. It was a really 6-year deal. And if you've never been to Peru, it's quite a place. And there's some magical things about Peru. I was changed a lot by the unusual buildings that are built there, and I stopped believing the tour guide story. I think the place affected me. I really do. But anyway, this quote here that I just randomly opened up to is by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it speaks to me this morning. It says, "To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded." It's by Ralph Waldo Emerson. I'll read it one more time because I like it. "To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded." And the chapter goes on to talk about all the things that we did in our missionary service and sharing the love of Christ with people all over southern Peru. We worked with orphanages, and but really we attracted a lot of doctor and dental teams to come down, and I guided them all over southern Peru, which is the reason I know that country really well. It was the nature of my job to guide groups of people all back through the Andes Mountains there, and I could take you so far back in the Andes you think you went back in time. There are people, millions of people, just in the country of Peru alone, who never made it into the landline. They missed the landline telephone. There were no telephone lines where they lived. All right, and this was you know, this is what kept them isolated and undistracted from the rest of the world. I mean, they might have had a telephone down in the town center. A lot of these little towns still have that, where the phone rings in the middle of town and they have a little loudspeaker that calls your name. And they say, yeah, hang on just a second. And they say, Steve Dyer, come to the telephone, Steve Dyer. You know, and you got to wait for a little while, and people come running into town to answer their call. That still happens today, but the point is that it's so primitive there that they didn't have telephone lines, and they completely missed the dial, landline telephone. And the first telephone they ever got was a cell phone. And this was amazing to me because I thought everybody had a telephone, and but there are parts of Peru that are completely cut off. What they're finding now, and what's causing a lot of problems in Peru and other Amazon jungle areas, is the oil company or the mining company or some other company that wants the resources. It's not just the mess that they make and the destruction to the environment from the work that they do, drilling or mining. The problem is, in order to get back there, they got to punch a road back in there. They got to take a bulldozer, and cut a road so they can get all their equipment back in there. That's a problem. And because what was once inaccessible land, now the general public can move back in there and use it, and go hunting or whatever they want to do, homesteading, and logging, anything. And so it's the constant pushing of the roads back further into the bush that causes a lot of the environmental destruction. It's the company itself, but then it's also the local people that access that property through the road. And long after the oil company's gone, the locals are cruising back in there and chopping down the trees and killing off the wildlife and generally, encroaching on tribal lands and stuff like that. And so anyway, it's primitive. Just suffice it to say that in Peru, it's getting more modern all the time. Especially you go to Lima, you see beautiful things in the city. Cusco is getting a bit more modern now, but when you go a short distance out from there into the hinterland, and you're going to find primitive life, the likes of which you never imagined if you're from the United States. And we had medical clinics. We take these doctors back to these communities that we found out about, and we would have gone in there and talked to the locals and found out, where we should set up and if they needed a doctor and all that. All of them did. They all want a free medical clinic, and then we take them back in there and set up a field clinic, and people would just come from miles around. You might show up there on the day of the clinic, and there'd be 400, 500, 600 people hanging around waiting to see the doctors or the dentist. Or we had eye clinic teams where they bring 1,000 pairs of donated eyeglasses, and they had a neat little thing where these eye clinic teams, the ophthalmologists, have a device called a portable auto refractor, and it's about the size of a little video camera, and you can point it into somebody's eye and get an accurate prescription, and they'll be able to put some glasses on your eye, and you would not believe the reaction to a person. It's hard for us to imagine, but a person who has never seen the doctor and never been to an eye doctor and has always lived with impaired vision, and you put a pair of glasses on them, it's like, wow, and it is literally, I've seen cases where the blind could now see pretty much. And I've had people who They never really got a good look at their family. There's this little boy one time, we put a pair of glasses on him and he was just looking down at the ground all over the place. And we said, "What are you looking at, little boy?" He said, "Wow, there's grass. I never saw the grass, the blades of grass." He said, "I knew it was green, but I never saw the individual plants, It's amazing. You're just so accustomed to seeing detail and with having clear vision. It's amazing. We had a medical clinic one time, and another thing that comes to my mind is when you were a little child here in the United States, more than likely your mom or somebody taught you that if you get a scrape on your knee, you pull out a little antiseptic and clean it off and put some Neosporin ointment on it and put a Band-Aid on it and be okay, right? You would be amazed at how many millions of people do not know this, all right? This simple idea of cleaning the cut and putting a bandage on it. A lot of people don't understand this. And we had a man come into a medical clinic. He was only about in his 30s, and he was on the brink of, losing his legs because they were so infected. And we finally got his pants off, and the doctors had a look at him. He had gotten, I think, kicked by a cow and got a small cut on his shin or his leg, and his answer to that was simply to wrap old newspaper around it and then put his pants on. He just tie it with a string, and so as it got worse and worse, and it would get wet and sweaty. And so he'd just keep putting more newspaper on it. And when we took his pants off and looked at his leg, it looked like he had covered it with paper mache. And it was almost like a hard cast that had formed around the leg. And we had to actually, sort of chip and peel all of this old newspaper off of the wound just to get a look at it. It was awful. I won't describe for you all the details, but just suffice to say, he had a very infected leg, and they began to question whether or not it was actually salvageable. It was the most god-awful thing. And so, that little, ever since then, ever since Peru especially, and my travels all around the world, I say little medical prayers all the time. Thank God for, the basic medical care. Thank God for doctors and dentists and prescription drugs, I think the pendulum obviously has swung way out of balance, and one needs to take responsibility for as much of your own health as possible, so you don't got to go see a doctor. But man, when you need one, thank goodness. And just some basic, to walk around in this world with a little bit of education. I gotta thank my mom and dad. Look at that hair, would you? Huh? Did I get ready this morning or not? I better put that hat back on. But I thank God for my mom and dad taking me to the doctor and teaching me, giving me some basic education. That's what I was going to say. To walk around in this world with a little bit of, simple education is an amazing thing, and it makes you a very rich person in the grand scheme of things. Many people did not get the chance to have a good meal, put on some clean clothes, and go down to elementary school and junior high and high school and learn a few basic things about the world and about how it works. I personally think our education should more include a lot of the basic ways to sustain life, the things that we actually use. And a broad knowledge of natural plants is a good place to start. Our planet's covered with plants, and we don't know much of anything about them. Your average slob like me looks around, and I just see weeds and grass and flowers. I don't see a bunch of medicine, medicinal plants that if you know what to do, you can use them for all sorts of valuable things and not have to go to a pharmacy or a doctor. Not too terribly long ago, it was a year and a half, 2 years ago maybe, I was very sick, and I was feeling like I was, going to have to go to the hospital. And I didn't want it. To get me to go to a hospital is a very difficult thing. I got to be in bad shape. And I was starting to think, man, I may have to go to the emergency room. And so I called up, I typed a friend of mine in Costa Rica, and she told me to boil some parsley, fresh parsley. She said, run to the grocery store, buy some organic parsley, boil it into tea, and drink a whole bunch of it. So I did. And I also drank, she told me to drink pure cranberry juice with no sugar added. Drink a bunch of that too. And a little bit of apple cider vinegar and water. And I did those things, and within a short period of time, I was feeling much better. And I'm telling you, I had a fever, my whole body ached, my kidneys were hurting, and I was on the brink of some kind of kidney infection, and it was going to be bad. But it's the natural plants, the natural things in the world that help us. Anyway, sharing the love with people is really what I was going to talk about. And when we were in Peru, we didn't just do medical care. And I think one of the main reasons that I had such a hard time coming back to the United States and trying to work my way back into corporate real estate life in Houston, Texas, is because of the contrast. The contrast was such a shock for me, coming from up in the mountains of Cusco, Peru, in such a loving environment. Where here we were bringing needed medical care and needed financial resources and construction projects and just basic food and shelter to people, built people some houses. And so as a result, we got a lot of hugs and a lot of love from the people that we shared with. We, the caregivers, benefited mightily as well. And these mission teams that would come down from the United States that we would guide around there, they would love us and hug us and tell us how proud they were that we were doing such a wonderful job helping people and sharing the love of Christ. And then of course the people we shared with, they loved us, and it was just a number of years, 6 years full of love. And to come back to Houston, where there are a bunch of wonderful people, but it is such a clash in environment. In Peru, in the rural environments where we were, people didn't really even have much money, much less, be fighting over it all the time. When you're, for example, when you live in a little Quechua Indian village up in the mountains of Peru, let's say you're a young couple, you fall in love and want to get married and have a home. Well, you don't got to go to a banker and get a mortgage, the people of the village, once you get married, they say, okay, you're going to take this little plot of our community land, and all the people of the village are going to get together and have a brick making party. And they go and they get a bunch of mud and gravel and straw, and they squish it all together. They take off their shoes, and they make this big mud pit. And this is all while they're drinking chicha, which is a corn beer. And they'll get together and they'll make this mud pit, and they'll take off their shoes and they'll dance around in it, and they put gravel and straw and make this adobe. And then they put together bricks, hundreds of bricks. And then maybe a week or two later, when the brick's dry, they'll have another party, and they'll build you a house out of those bricks. And then you'll live there, and they'll say, okay, you're gonna help us farm this part of the crop. It's very communal there, And So that young couple's not strapped with some mortgage and how to figure out. All you have to do is work within the community, and there's a tremendous amount of harmony and love that goes into that. And here, and so to go from this beautiful environment where people aren't so focused on money, and to go down to Houston, Texas, and start competing in the real estate market again, brokering houses, and people just arguing and fearful about money and who's going to get it and who's going to take advantage of me and how am I going to get the best of them. And I think that vibration affected me a lot, to go from a really loving, nurturing environment to just this sort of dog eat dog type environment. It affected me, and it's part of the reason that I'd gotten into sort of this depressed state, and that's the reason I went down to South America, to that farm in Colombia that I talked about all last week, and thank God I did that. Many of the things that we did to love people, we didn't just help manage an orphanage. A lot of people think, well, we went down and helped this orphanage, which we did. And eventually we had like 6 orphanages that we were bringing missionary service to. These different mission teams would come down, and we did all these things. And we did a lot of that, but we just did so many things that shared the love with people, and I'm just going to read for you some of the things that we did in order to share the love of Christ down in Peru, and raise the vibration. Raising the vibration. I'll say it again. And that one of the main drives of me talking on this thing is try to help raise the vibration of humanity. I believe that people are often in a low state. I know I am, and whatever we can do to raise our own vibration, to bring about the balance of this, this tight and left brain logical and the right brain intuitive, and bringing a balance to those instead of being so set in this sort of hardened pattern of thinking, and being generous and sharing love with people and receiving love in return is wonderful therapy, and helps you loosen up, take yourself out of yourself, to go out of your mind and get into the heart and mind of someone else by giving and getting involved with their life. That has been a great thing for me. It was life-changing that I did that for several years. Because the fact of the matter is, folks, Stevie's been a selfish little shit most of his life, all right? And I'll deal with that till the end of my life. But the fact is that when we surrendered to not chase real estate dollars, and we answered this call to go down to Peru and help these people, it was life-changing for us, and it was life-changing for our children. And all of a sudden they realized that the United States was not the center of the universe anymore, that there were other places and other people, we just completely unplugged. When you travel, it is an altered state of consciousness. And I've observed it, having run in and out of the United States for many, many years to different places all around the planet. When you get on an airplane and you leave all that is familiar to you, and you travel to some place that is completely unfamiliar to you, what happens is, in your mind, a lot of the little machines and senses that you haven't been using, they all turn on, okay? All of a sudden, your radar clicks on because everything is unfamiliar. When you're back in your predictable little world here in the United States, you're wherever you live, all that's familiar, you're on sort of automatic pilot in many ways, and your mind is not open to a sense of wonder. It's more open to a sense of habit and routine. And so when you go to a foreign place, and now you're on the ground there with people who don't even speak your language, and you've got to find your way. And this has been my hobby all my life, is finding my way through unfamiliar territory, or guiding people in unfamiliar territory. And when that happens, the reason people really enjoy that is because it completely opens up your senses. It completely makes you feel like that you need to be on high alert, and it is an altered state of consciousness. And people are much more apt when they're on a vacation or some kind of trip. They're much more apt to try something new, to try new food, to take a yoga class or learn meditation, or sit down and speak with someone unusual and open themselves up to stuff. It's because it's an altered state of consciousness when you travel, and you feel more alive. And you're much more apt to connect with the local people on the ground, to establish friendships, to connect a loving, heart-centered, electromagnetic energy, to connect yours with other people. That's what love's all about. It's not just the sharing of things, but it's the electromagnetic heart connection that makes you feel good and makes raises the collective vibration, and at some point it'll be a collective harmony in the world, and we won't have so much tribalism where it's us versus them, we're right and they're wrong. And there's something about sharing the love that dissolves borders, it dissolves boundaries. You can say, hey, I don't like Muslims, but you wind up in some place like Morocco at the breakfast room table of some family who treats you so kindly and personally, and they share a little bit about themselves and their faith and their customs and habits and all that. All of a sudden, Muslims don't seem so bad, and I find it's individual people that you want to connect with, not constantly be focused on what the group mentality, the hive mind is doing. The hive mind is a dangerous thing, and sharing the love with individuals personally is what dissolves the hive mind. Just sitting down and having a cup of tea with somebody that's of a different culture, this dissolves the hive mind, and it shares the love directly. It's a personal what we really want, and from the time we're born, we instinctively know we want an intimate connection with human beings. That's what we want. And we crave that, and when we can't get that, drives us crazy. You hear about like these orphanages over in Romania and places like this, and not to pick on them, it's just what comes to mind. But when these orphanages, had so little money that they were understaffed, and you'd have little babies sitting in a crib all day, all by themselves. And they weren't touched and hugged and loved. They start to go stir crazy. It drives them insane. If you can't get that electromagnetic love from people, it's a vibration that we need. And that's why when you get hugged and you embrace someone, especially when you embrace them really tightly for longer than just a few seconds, what happens to a human being when you do that is that they feel a sense of a belonging and care, and that they're cared for and they're safe, and that someone really does love them. They can feel it. You don't have to say anything to them. When you hug somebody and give them a long, firm embrace like that, the love is felt. It doesn't have to be verbally communicated. You realize there's so much that words cannot express, and but what we did in Peru, and I'm just going to read you a partial of this list, but it wasn't just caring for an orphanage in what we did in Peru when we were missionaries down there is we painted buildings and we restarted an abandoned hog farm, and we played sports with the kids, and we guided medical teams to remote areas, and we guided all kinds of teams, and we helped build a couple of churches, and we raised money for programs and projects. We organized art projects. We had these art people that would come. Every different type of missionary work you can think of. Medical, dental, sports ministry, music, education, construction. There's so many different things that we did. And on top of that, we just cared for people all the time. We cut the grass, we washed the clothes, we used chainsaws, we dug drainage ditches, we recruited experts in agriculture, and we recruited all kinds of people. And we read kids to sleep. We read to kids all the time. We worked on water treatment plants, and we worked on waste management. We bought supplies, we installed roofs. We built a lot of different types of structures, and there's a lot of construction people. Thank God for them. They come down and volunteer their time, bring us tools. We had so many different, the Holy Spirit worked through us in so many ways down there in Peru, and one of the ways was that I was able to communicate with people back home and say, hey, get your ass down here and help us, and I'll pick you up at the Cusco airport. That was the key phrase. I'll pick you up at the airport. Come on, you need to get on this team, or just come down by yourself, or whatever. We had so many people come down to Peru and serve and share love with people, and it was the most beautiful thing. And we did all sorts of stuff. We did a lot of cleaning and mopping. We guided door-to-door, visiting teams. We mixed concrete. We drove kids all over the places in our trucks and vans. We were like a taxi service all the time. Yeah, that's another thing. Here in the United States, when I turned 16, I couldn't wait to get my driver's license, all right? Nothing would hold me back. I mean, I was bucking for a hardship license when I was 15. My mom and dad say, hey, like, we're not divorced. Where's the hardship? You ain't getting one of those licenses. So the idea that a person would be 30, 40, 50, 60 years old in Peru and never have gone and gotten a driver's license. This was a foreign concept to me. And I was like, what do you mean you're 50 years old and you don't know how to drive? There are thousands and thousands of people in the country of Peru that have never operated a motor vehicle, all right, ever. They've never been entrusted to sit behind the wheel of a car and drive it, okay, or never had the money or the wherewithal. I mean, thousands. Can you imagine? I mean, my car is an extension of my body, and I can't imagine not having a motor vehicle or never having driven one. But we drove people all over Peru and you see people, they get into cars, they got their animals, they got all their stuff from the market. You won't believe what they cram into these cars or strap onto the top. Anyway, we drove people a lot of places. We painted fences. We moved dirt and rocks in big trucks. We robbed beehives and jarred honey and did fruit preserves. We made jewelry and we recruited other people, churches and mission teams and volunteers to get involved. We got Texas A&M to come down and help with our agriculture program. We sang songs, and we walked a long way all over the place. And we built fires, and we drew blueprints for buildings, and we fought with snakes sometimes, and we ate crude local food to honor the others. Now this is a hitch. If you go into somebody's house in Peru, and I'm not talking, anything fancy, a mud brick hut. When you go into one, the host of the family will instantly want to serve you something to eat or drink. And I'm telling you, when you take a look at it, sometimes, you know, you don't want to touch that. You never know what their sanitation is and stuff, and yet you want to honor the people whose home you're in, and so you don't want to disgrace them by turning down what they offer you. And so I developed a little trick, and I taught my daughters this too. Whenever you're going into a person's home, you always carry something with you. Carry a can of Coca-Cola or a little something in your hands that you're already consuming. All right, and so when they offer you something, you say, "Oh no, I already have this. Thank you." And that was a good trick, because you'd find yourself looking into a cup of some kind of something they gave you, and you're like, do I really got to drink that? But anyway, we went visiting to a lot of places. We let's see, we led people on tours. We did a lot of ceramic tile. We laid ceramic tile and drank lots of coca tea. And we did accounting, and we hugged people, and we visited numerous mud brick homes, and we built people these homes, and we worked in the garden, and we cooked and served food and installed irrigation. And we fed the homeless and poor, and we gave strangers a ride, and we pulled abscessed teeth. I can't tell you how many times I assisted with these doctors and dentists, and doing all manner of medical procedures that they would never let me do back in the United States. But I was like the nurse and the gopher, for the doctor. And we hammered nails, and we treated kids for lice, and we cut hair, and we played lots of soccer and football, and taught English and computer, and we did all sorts of stuff, and we prayed all the time, and I'll tell you, it was life-changing for me. And I don't know if you're connected to a church. I highly recommend it. It was great for me. And oftentimes your church will have a mission outreach type of program that you can just sort of plug yourself into, or you can just do it on your own in your daily life. You can figure out who is in need of something and go help them. Habitat for Humanity is a good thing. I've done that a few times. Habitat for Humanity, you can usually just attach yourself to a project just for a day. You don't have to make some long commitment. You go, I've gone to people's houses, and they're all overgrown with weeds and junk all in the yard, and the house is all, ramshackle. And you go in there and help fix the place up, clean it up, haul away the junk, give them a better home to live in. And there's something of deep satisfaction, something that raises your vibration, my friends, if you go out and extend yourself and share the love. And I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity, and going down Peru was not only life-changing in a lot of other ways. My exposure to the buildings and my awareness of what took place down there, the horrific takeover by the Spanish and this domination that's happened to this day. But I learned all about that kind of stuff, and that was life-changing. It caused this big shift in my worldview. It really did, being in Peru. For some reason, I needed to be in Peru to get a broader perspective, and it's hard to understand how life unfolds and why it does, and why you're exposed to certain things that you are. But I'll tell you one thing: being in an environment and in a career where my primary objective was not to gather for myself. My primary objective every day was to identify people in need and then organize teams of people and resources to go and help them. And that was a wonderful thing. And I made a commitment to my daughter Ellie that I'd bring her back so she could have a couple of years of high school. We wound up living as a family down in Peru for 4 years, and I'd probably still be down there if I hadn't made that commitment. But I wanted to get Ellie back to school, and we didn't really know how it was going to work out when we went to Peru. We only thought we'd be there for a year or two. We wound up staying 4 full years, and then. Coming back, I mean, what a train wreck that was, to come from Cusco, Peru to Houston, Texas. And, tomorrow I'm going to tell you about my lost dog. Maybe I got a few minutes to tell you right now, but this is an interesting thing that comes to my mind. In asking, Lord, why is this happening? Why are you doing this? The last 3 days in Peru, we had, moved out of our house, we'd sold our car, and now we're going to spend 3 days in Lima, Peru, just hanging out with our kids. And Sherry and I had some errands to run, and we ran off. We left the girls, Ellie and Martha Ann, with our brand new little dog, Lucy. And Lucy was a little poodle. And I bought that dog for the family for Christmas. She was only about 6 or 8 months old. And there we were in Lima, Peru. We ran off for a little bit. We come back, and the girls reported that Lucy had bolted away from a park in Lima, Peru, and was lost. And these 2 English guys that were staying with the girls, they had been running all over the place trying to find the dog, but our little poodle was gone. And you have to appreciate, this was like a family member, as most everyone's dog is. And we had already given away our golden retriever. I had a beautiful golden retriever named Freeway, and we had given Freeway to the neighbors. But we still had Lucy, and we were taking Lucy home to Houston. We were leaving South America forever, in the next, couple of days. And so now Lucy is missing. We do not spend our last 3 days in Lima having fun, hanging out by the swimming pool at the Hilton Hotel. We spend 3 days and 2 horrible nights looking for this dog, all right? And I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, and either one or more of the girls would be up, pacing the floor, crying, wondering where the lost dog was. We went in and out of the Hilton Hotel there in Lima, Peru, numerous times a day, crying, and the people at the Hilton were all concerned, and couldn't find the dog. I got angry with God at the time. I was like, God, here we've been in Peru for 4 years trying to serve people and help people, and now this. I mean, why would you take my dog? And it was it was one of the most horrible experiences of my family life, was losing Lucy. And then the day came, where we had to get on a jet and fly back to Houston. We had plane reservations, and I was like, girls, I'm sorry, we're going to have to go home, and oh, they cried. It was so horrible. We had to leave Lucy in Peru. It was like leaving one of the children in Peru. But we had to do it, and the nice little concierge at the Hilton Hotel vowed that he was going to find the dog, and I thought it was nice, but I thought for sure I'd never see that dog again, right? So we got on a plane and flew home to Houston, left the dog cage and all the dog stuff back there. We didn't have a dog anymore. It was awful. So we got back. We were at my parents' house in Houston for about a week. When I get this email that the concierge at the Hilton Hotel has found the dog, and he sends us pictures. I didn't believe it, and then I thought, I told my wife, hey, this is probably going to be costly. Get ready, there's going to be a reward, and I tried to offer the guy $500. He wouldn't hear of it. Bless his heart, the concierge at the Hilton Hotel in Miraflores in Lima, Peru, was just, no, it's all part of the job. And this little guy, he found the dog. The dog was slightly injured. He got it to a veterinarian, kept the dog at his house with his mom the whole time. and then took our dog to the quarantine at United Airlines and sat with Lucy while she was in her cage there, and then got her on the plane. And I mean, you should have seen the look on my kids' faces when that dog came out of the cage and we got Lucy back. I mean, it was a classic Hallmark moment, folks. I mean, and it was one of the happiest days of our lives when we got Lucy back from Peru, safe and sound. I couldn't believe it. And so I tried to start giving the guy a reward, and he wouldn't do it. And so what I did was I sat down and I wrote a tear-jerking letter to the CEO of Hilton Worldwide up in Virginia. Their world headquarters is up there, and they have 3,600 hotels all over the planet. And I wrote this letter to the guy and telling him how this Hilton concierge had saved the day. And he sent it to every one of the 3,600 Hilton hotels all over the planet. And he said, this is the kind of concierge we want. And that little guy won the hospitality award for the whole company that year. I think he got a promotion. The next time I took a group of missionaries down to Peru, we went by the Hilton Hotel, and I presented him with a Texas cowboy hat and thanked him. It was amazing. And so what happened from that? Well, I actually made several new friends because there was an article in the Houston paper called Cusco to Kingwood, in which our family was featured with the dog, and it was a whole story of how we had lost our dog. And it was found in a city of 9 million people, and down there in Lima, Peru, 9 million people. And somehow this concierge actually found the dog through a series of security guards. Down there, all the nice neighborhoods and even some of the not so nice neighborhoods, they got armed security guards that are all, in front of those neighborhoods, and they've got a little network of communication around with those guys. And he networked and called and found the dog somehow, and nobody charged us. That was the miracle of it all, because down in Peru, everybody wants to get greased, and so it was the most beautiful gift. And in the process, a guy in Houston named Philippe Cross, who's my good friend. Hello, Philippe. He was one of the owners of the Hilton Homewood Suites there in Kingwood, where we live. He read the article and made it his business to find out where I was, got in touch with me, and he became my good friend. He tried to get me to join the Rotary Club, and I sold him a couple of houses, and to this day, he's one of my very best friends. And so when you ask God, why do you do stuff, He can see a lot further than you can. Whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, the creator, the source energy, whatever you want to call it, all names are inadequate if you ask me. The word God or universe or Holy Spirit does not cover what it is. Our language is a low-dimensional language that just does not describe adequately. But whatever you want to call it, it has an organizing, knowing quality about it. It can see far in advance to what's happening right now. And when you ask God, why would you do this? Wait for a year or two and see how it looks then. It's not easy to do at the time, but that storm cloud had a silver lining. And it was beautiful. And now Lucy, we changed her. The dog's name is Lucy. We changed it to Lucky Lucy, and she lives with my daughter in Austin, Texas, right now. And so that was an amazing turn of events. And it was all full of love and hugs and people who cared. And I just can't say enough about actively sharing the love and helping people. It raises their vibration when a stranger reaches out and does something like, point to them in the grocery store and say, hey, have I told you that I loved you today? Because it's true, And there's just something about, reaching outside of yourself and doing it for selfish reasons, to share love and care and attention and helping people in need. It's a beautiful thing, and so that's about all I got for today. Just remember this from Rodgers and Hammerstein: a song's not a song until you sing it. And how does that go? Oh, a bell's not a bell until you ring it. A song's not a song until you sing it. The love in your heart was not put there to stay. Love is not love until you give it away. And so, I hope it raises your vibration. It raises mine just saying it. And at some point, the heavy vibration of this planet, will raise to a certain level. I believe it is the Christ consciousness that we learned about from Jesus. This higher understanding and knowing, and it's coming. You can see it happening all the time. You can feel the barometric pressure is changing, and there's a coming weather pattern, a spiritual weather pattern of some kind is headed this way. And I'm doing whatever I can in my own disorganized way. I'm going to show up here every single day and say something in hopes of raising my own vibration and those around me. Have I told you that I loved you today? Because it's true, And so go out and ring that bell. And don't give up. Don't ring that bell. Ring the one that let your light shine and let it shine all over the people. And I love you. And Stevie the Guide here from Kerrville, Texas, doing the best I can, baby. And go out and make it a great day. I love you. See